3, 4.
Yes.
All right, excellent. I'm going to call the meeting to order then. So good morning, everyone. I'm still Tim Murphy, chair of the board. And because of public health measures, as you know, we are continuing to conduct these meetings online and live streaming it for our twos and threes of viewers at home on YouTube. Want to begin with a land acknowledgement that we hold this virtual meeting on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe and Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Acknowledged Toronto's covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I do want to welcome to his inaugural board meeting our new president and CEO, Jag Sharma. Welcome. Jag began August 3rd, and we had an extensive process and extremely pleased by the result of it and his willingness to say yes. He brings extensive experience in the private, public, and Crown corporation sectors to a role most recently as the Chief Administrative Officer for the town of Newmarket. And in the course of looking at a new CEO, we worked together with Jag to talk through a 100-day plan, and we look forward to hearing his report on progress on that, as well as some observations that he is making after his initial few months on the job, in particular related to the organization's strategic priorities. I do want to welcome Ibrahim Afra, who is attending today's board meeting for the first time as the director of our Center for the Advancement of the Interests of Black People. She was a successful candidate for the position starting September 20th, and the board, and I'm sure many of you will know her because she was part of the team and led the team that developed our confronting anti-Black racism strategy, and she brings outstanding knowledge, experience, expertise to the role. And with her in place as the director, work will continue on completing a recruitment process for the other positions and in launching the center this fall. Yes, welcome. I do want to acknowledge the first ever National Day for Truth and Reconciliation took place on September 30th, and in recognition of the event, Community Housing held several educational events to raise staff awareness of the tragic legacy of residential schools and to promote meaningful discussions on how we can continue to take actions towards reconciliation. Employees across the company observed a moment of silence at 2:15. Many wore orange shirts to honor Indigenous children who experienced trauma from residential school system as part of the Orange Shirt Day on that same day. Thank you to those employees who organized these events as well as all those who took part. I do want to also take a moment to reflect on the tragic impacts of gun violence in our communities. Last month, a fatal shooting struck down 2 young men who were community leaders and mentors to local youth. Sam Asamo Aboachi, age 30 in Driftwood, and Thane Murray, age 27 in Regent Park. As well, in July, the life of 16-year-old Caden Francis was cut short by gun violence in our Glamorgan community. On behalf of the board, I want to extend our sincere condolences to the family, friends, and neighbors of Sam, Thane, and Caden, and also our sympathies and well wishes to those who've been seriously injured and recovering, among them a 12-year-old boy walking home at night in our Falstaff community, and 3 children at a child's birthday party in our Tandridge community. Incidents of gun violence are senseless and are unacceptable. All TCHC tenants and our neighbors are entitled to the full enjoyment and safety of our communities, and preventing gun violence is a top priority for our organization, but we cannot do it alone. It takes collaboration with partners working together towards a common goal, and we are committed to working alongside the City of Toronto, all of the councillors at the city, the Toronto Police, and community and social agencies delivering service
are unacceptable.
Are giving agencies delivering service and programs in our communities and our tenants themselves as well to find solutions that will make our community safer. Improvements to service delivery is another area we're talking about. TCHC continues to move forward in 2021 with plans to improve housing and service delivery for tenants through the tenant service hubs in the family portfolio and the integrated service model in the seniors portfolio. To date, 19 tenant service hubs have been opened, including 80 Blake Street in East Toronto, 10 Old Meadow Lane in Lawrence Heights, and earlier this week, 100 High Park Avenue in the West Region. The service hubs reflect our commitment to adding frontline resources and empowering decision-making by local staff, all supporting the tenant's first idea and tenant's needs. And the goal is to have 90 tenant service hubs open across the city by the end of the year. On September 23rd, the Seniors Housing Unit began the Phase 2 launch of the integrated service model for seniors housing in 44 buildings. Combined with the 18 buildings where the model was introduced last December, this means the model is being used to deliver supports and services to seniors in 52 of our 83 seniors buildings. Once fully implemented next year, the model will support more than 14,000 seniors tenants to age in place and enjoy better quality of life and, of course, quality tenancies in our buildings and the seniors buildings. This is United Way campaign and United Way season, and we're launching ours on October 13th through the 3rd. Last year we raised $43,000, and we're looking to improve on that somewhat this year, hoping to get to 60. United Way makes a real difference in our communities, and the United Way of Greater Toronto has been on the front lines of addressing the issues in those communities and provides a vital network of care for people. And we believe that donations are helpful in building stronger communities. On behalf of the board, I encourage everyone to give generously, and thank you to the team led by Deramar in running this year's campaign. Finally, I would note that there are no decisions or approvals to report out of the board, a confidential session. Today we have our usual committee reports by the committee board chairs, or the board committee chairs. As a presentation by Jag about his first 60 days. Barbara Schulman will update us on the negotiation of the new collective agreement with Local 7-9, update on seniors housing transition, and something that obviously we're committed to ensuring is done well and most importantly is smooth for the tenants and staff. In terms of COVID-19, we are following the mandatory vaccination direction from the city and looking to have employees fully vaccinated by October 30th. And with September 30th, the deadline to disclose vaccination status. We support and believe in mandatory vaccination, and our approach will be based on this apology. Our approach will be based on the city's policy and implemented in a manner that's consistent with human right obligations to employees, to those entitled legally to an accommodation. I, of course, want to encourage everyone to get vaccinated because fundamentally it is the key to preventing serious illness and hospitalization, and frankly, the best way to protect our neighbors and tenants and friends from this horrible disease. Of course, I want to thank all of our employees for the tremendous work they've done in the very difficult pandemic times. Your efforts to deliver essential services in our buildings and communities and to keep the business running while working from home and sometimes where in our buildings are deeply appreciated. Please stay healthy and safe. And with that, I conclude my remarks. We do have our normal deputation process in place, and Dara will be managing that for us. We have some identified in writing and some who've asked to speak orally, and we'll deal with those as the issues arise. I now want to deal with the public consent agenda items, which are listed, and the regular items. First, any conflict of interest from the board? Great, none declared. So do any members of the board want to hold items on the consent agenda? Yeah, so start with Anna and then John.
Item E, Regent Park.
We have deputants on that matter, so we'll hold it for the deputants as well.
And then item K, work plan for comparison for TCHC and other social housing providers.
Okay. John? You're on mute, John. The most used sentence in 2020 and
Sorry about
2021.
Yes, the same two items that Anna's holding.
Okay. Any other director? Okay, subject to those two holds, can I get a motion to
So,
approve?
And sorry, we just, there are deputants as well on items 2J and 2L. So what we'd ask the board to approve is all the matters on the consent agenda with the exception of E, J, K, and L.
Sorry, I think I saw Councilor Nunziata put her hand up. Was that just to move the?
Well, I was just going to point out the deputations that we have to
Oh,
hold.
okay, all right, okay. So with the exception of those four items, can I get a motion to approve the consent? Debbie, seconded by Adele. All those in favor? Great, thank you. So we might as well just take them in order. So item E. So we have deputants on that. I think
We
as I
have four
understand it,
deputants.
you-
We have four deputants on that matter. The first is Walid Kugali, and I believe that Mr. Kugali is on the line.
Hello?
Mr. Kugali, are you with us?
Yes, good morning. Can you folks hear me?
We can. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Walid Kogali, and I'm deputing on behalf of the Regional Park Community Benefits Coalition with regards to the item that's ahead of you. I believe supplementary documentation was sent to you folks yesterday, specifically a response to the city and TCHC with regards to the community's ask for a trilateral community benefits agreement. We also shared with you terminology with regards to community benefits and some research commissioned by the Toronto Community Benefits Network with regards to examples, Canadian examples of trilateral community benefits agreements that were implemented and led by Indigenous people across Canada. So my deputation is going to focus on a simple request, which is there is an application for rezoning that's ahead of you, and specifically a request for more allocations in funding with regard to consultation when it comes to engagement for rezoning. I want to challenge the board to think about how they can work with the neighborhood associations, so the Regional Park Neighborhood Association, and the various stakeholders of the social development plan that has been funded by the City of Toronto annually for about $500,000. How you can work with those stakeholders to co-create the review of the community's needs by conducting important studies, not just focused on facilities, but also on community space and other needs that have been identified by the community in the priorities report. So my ask is for the delay of the submission of the application by TCHC from this December 2021, so that the community has an opportunity to identify community assets during the one-year community benefits consultation process before the rezoning application is initiated by TCHC and approved by the City of Toronto. Work collaboratively with the RPNA, the Community Benefits Coalition, to identify community assets that should be included in the rezoning application. Involve the community in the co-creation of solutions catered for Region Park by providing an opportunity for residents to be involved in the decision-making process. Please note that the community benefits consultations start in January of 2022. We also want clear commitments before the rezoning application, a commitment in writing that a tri-party community benefits agreement that would be signed by Tridel, TCHC, and the RPNA, honoring the legacy of Indigenous people that have created community benefit agreements across Canada. Also, a commitment to the Community Benefits Oversight Working Group to act as a decision-making body with respect to the following community benefits: the allocation of $26.8 million secured through the procurement process, and any allotments to the SDP, so the Social Development Plan stakeholder tables, should be cash value and distributed through the deep dive SDP process. We also want community government and controlled space as specified in the Community Priorities Report, as well as updates of reports on studies and strategies that are important to making sure that we have social cohesion and inclusion. We want the Community Benefits Oversight Working Group or the CBC to to consent to the accuracy of the community services and facility study and strategy and be able to change or approve before it is submitted to the city. We want to be part of that process. The RPNA and the Community Benefits Coalition, we want them to identify the key stakeholder in the public consultation strategy report. We want the public consultation strategy report to identify a specific consultation meeting for Regent Park residents to discuss community benefits and mitigation strategies to address social impacts from any increase in density. We've heard from our neighbors south of our neighborhood in Corktown who resisted any increase in density without any mitigation strategies to address the remedies that are needed to address the social costs caused by that increase in density. We also want the master plan application. We want a copy of that to be circulated to the RPNA and the coalition prior to the submission to the City of Toronto. That is submitted respectfully on behalf of the Regent Park Community Benefits Coalition. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputant? Great. Thank you for your time and submission. I think there's a couple more, Dara.
The next deputant is Ismael Aphra. I believe Mr. Afra is on the line. Mr. Afra, can
Yes,
you hear
I'm
us?
here.
You've got 5 minutes.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, board members. My name is Ismael Aphra. I'm a Regent Park resident. I've been here before in your board many times and communicated some of the concerns, some of the successes. I was at the December 25th meeting when Toronto Community Housing announced Tridel as the new developer, and was excited to hear that 26.75 million was allocated for community benefits. And I wanted to continue that conversation with you. I remember at the time I informed you that the revitalization in Regent Park, that Toronto Community Housing has introduced new staffing when it comes to at the management level, at the director level. Everybody who we knew as staff was replaced or went somewhere. So I was always concerned that the new staffing would not be able to understand the context and culture of the neighborhood, and that relationships and that we built together would not continue, that everything would have to restart. And those fears actually are coming true. Given the nature that everyone is new to the neighborhood, there's a misunderstanding of some of the priorities. So, for instance, we know that if you want to get a new mixed market community, you have to believe in the vision of cohesion and inclusion. What that means is that you have to support a neighborhood that is both Toronto Community Housing residents as well as market residents. So in anticipation of that, Regent Park had built a neighborhood association with a 50-50% members, so that even when later on market residents outnumber Toronto Community Housing residents, the voices of TCHC residents are respected in the association as a 50% representation. We also coupled that with the social development plan. Revitalization is seen as two feet. One is physical development, the other is social development. We make sure that in the social development, organizations, residents, both TCH and market, are working together to solve neighborhood issues. However, introducing this new element staff with Peter Zimmerman, Teresa, they are unaware of the importance of the neighborhood association, the importance of the SDP as a cohesive body. In our negotiations, about community benefits, we've stressed the importance of creating an oversight committee that has equal representation. They've insisted that one group of people be more. So, for instance, they insisted that TCHC Tenant Council, which is a governance structure that's important, but nonetheless a governance structure that is not representative of all other stakeholders, have more membership than others. I, as a TCHC, object to that because we know that in order to make the Regent Park work, you need equal representation. Even in the future, when TCHC members are less than to market, we have a structure that is representational. So that is threatened as well. Also, what is threatened is we want to have an important say in how community benefit is co-designed, co-developed, and co-implemented. We've seen the history of phases 1 and 2 and 3, which was remarkable things were achieved. Nonetheless, we've learned through that experience that community needs to be at the table. And the only way to assure that we're at the table is by having an agreement signed between the community, Tridel, and TCHC. Now, of course, there are some things that we have to work with the city, but also there is, we need that body to be a decision-making body. Now, the new team from TCHC is unwilling to have those conversations with us. I used to believe that at least we can disagree, but at least we have to understand one another. I used to believe that when I'm sitting someone across someone, I feel that this person is having a conversation with me. But now I do not feel like that. I feel that, even arguments and reasonings are not even being listened to. We're not even sharing our reasonings. I'm okay with someone telling me that's not feasible and explains to me why it's not feasible. But in this situation, the reasons provided are not even coherent. And the reasons we provide are not even being listened to. So I'm really concerned, and I hope that the new executive director of TCH and this board, who many times have listened to us and have made sure that community voices are heard, I want to tell you that you have to tell the new team to be more working closely with community members and not to speak for us. They are putting down on our throats an infrastructure that's not cohesive. That's not the future of Regent Park. So I hope that this deputation, you can speak to the new team and continue to work with us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on that deputation? No, thank you very much. Oh, yeah, Uba?
I was wondering what he told us his concern, and just a comment. I hope someone will sit down with him within the team and meet them where they're at and work with them, because we don't want people to feel dismissive and not being heard and not being inclusive. The whole thing of having these discussions and meetings is to consult with the community and to consult with the tenant and make sure that they feel that they're part of the process. So just that's my comment.
Great, thank you. Any others? Brian? You're on mute.
I just wondered whether we could hear from Sheila any comments with regards to these issue in terms of staff.
To Kelly.
Or,
Certainly.
Kelly.
Through the chair, TCHC's team on the ground has been working closely with various members of the community since December, when Tridel was approved by the board as our partner for phases 4 and 5. So this includes RPNA, it includes our other tenant voices as well, because we are committed to making sure that all voices, in Regent Park are heard, so that all of those voices and viewpoints can inform future work on phases 4 and 5. So I think, what I can say is we recognize that there is more work to be done by TCHC in concert, working with the councillor's office, the city, and certainly with our tenants in order to better respond to all of the recommendations put forth through the deputations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Our next deputant is Miguel Avila Velarde. I believe that Mr. Avila Velarde is on the line. Are you with us, Miguel?
Yes, good morning.
You have 5 minutes.
Thanks for allowing me to speak on this important item for our community of Regent Park. As the previous speakers, I'm also a representative of the Regent Park Neighborhood Association. I want to go on the record that we have had a recent tragedy in our communities, and we went. Many members of the community attended the funeral for Mr. Murray on Saturday. So this community has been rocked again by violence, gun violence, and we keep repeating ourselves, what is the magic bullet? What is the solution for gun violence? And we keep saying that poverty is one of the roots of violence. And we, as members of the coalition as well, we want to ensure that our community gets ahead on these phases 4 and 5, and we want to ensure that we have our voices heard. I want to also say that the information for this upcoming meeting at the City of Toronto today, the Adjustment Committee, the invitations was sent out, I believe, on September 27th. Somehow that information did not arrive to us. However, it was shared to some condominiums in Regent Park, and that's how we'll be able to find out that we missed a great opportunity to depute today's Committee of Adjustments regarding the rezoning. In particular, 175 Dundas Street East. There's a lot of letters coming from members of the community, basically from Cabbagetown, making notice their points of view. So again, I want to say also that on the record that we as a community, we came to this board in 2018 when we were put on a rush situation to come back with our original framework for the community benefits agreement. And there was so much rush that we had to come to this board to ask for an extension of time. So I'm in support of what my brother Walid and my brother Ismael has requested, that we have completed with these studies that are needed. He mentioned to you already, and the assessment needs for the community, so that way we can have the community also aware of what's going on, because it's been difficult during the pandemic to reach out to community members and speak about the community benefits agreements, et cetera, et cetera. So I will ask this board, please, I ask you for your attention to this important matter. Give us attention the time that is important to accomplish this, and please ensure that proper communication is shared with us. Apparently there has been a failure to communicate, and please, let's work together as a partners. Somehow we have to work together to ensure that our community gets the best results, because that's what it's all about, to get people out of poverty, and eventually they will be out of other guns and violence that we don't want to see another person have to be mourned from our community, especially Mr. Murray. It was just a random act of violence, and it shouldn't happen. And we will continue fighting, and that's the reason we are here, Walid and Ismael and myself. You are here for us until we get what is best for our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miguel. Any questions or comments from directors?
The next deputant is Ibrahim Afra. I believe Mr. Afra is on the line. Can you hear us? Mr. Afra, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. This is my first time debuting, so I do love the opportunity to do this, even though we are in a pandemic. So good job on facilitating the opportunities to the community through different platforms. My name is Ibrahim Afra, and I'm a resident of Regent Park. And Regent Park has been my first community since I came from Somalia. I went through revitalization of phases 1, 2, and 3, and I definitely appreciate the hard work TCHC and the partner developers have put through in developing these neighborhoods using these unique ways. of partnering up with private partners and really bringing two different communities that are socioeconomically different together and see how we can make it work together. So in my opinion, phases 1 and 2 and 3 has been a place where the community can be opened up to the rest of the local communities that surround the neighborhood. I just wanted to say that many of the opportunities that went through phases 1 and 2 and 3 are greatly appreciated. Right now, we are going to go through phases 4 and 5. And here, this committee or this board is right now looking to increase the money that is going to go through developing these phases 4 and 5. The only concern that I want the board to know is that the timeline of engaging the community and the timeline from right now till an application is submitted to the city is in December. And it is a short notice, and it is the board itself and the staff itself are saying it is a short notice, because I can see the turnaround here says towards the timeline associated within phases 4 and 5 rezoning process is very fast. And to really talk to the community in terms of what is going on, in terms of some of the benefits in phases 4 and 5, this timeline is very quick, very, very quick. So I know there's money attached to slowing things down, but if we can be heard, because there's additional funding being asked to engage the community. Most of the time when people say they want to engage the community, it's like they hear what you're saying, but what you're saying, is it really being taken into account? Does it show up into what is being developed? And I'm thinking sometimes it doesn't. And to really assure this community that things are going accordingly and the community, some of the community benefits are outlined and reassured early on, then I think the community will be definitely behind these rezoning and allocating additional funding to getting it done. But sometimes the outreach that happens is one from only hearing the community, but it's really, there is no actual commitments. So I'm really supporting that there should be commitments in a CBA, a community benefit agreement, and that should be, those commitments should really be outlined before TCHC submits to the city. And approving this funding to do some of these outreach, I would recommend that the city and TCHC tell the staff that really don't just listen to the community, show them what commitments you have for the community, so we can get behind phases 4 and 5. I definitely appreciate the time that you guys have given us to talk to you, especially in a pandemic, using multiple ways. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Great, thank you for your
Sorry.
deputations. I think that's the last one, Darryl.
Sorry, I miscounted. There is one further deputant, Ines Garcia.
Okay.
I believe Ms. Garcia is on the line. Can you hear us?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. This is my first time doing this. My name is Ines. I live in Regent Park for 33 years. I sit in our PNA and Community Benefit Coalition. CBC has done some great work with our PNA and CBC. There is no space for TCHC tenants' voice. I believe that TCHC tenants' voice needs to be heard and listened to their ideas and dreams. Why is it the same people are always speaking for us? Like, for example, private owners or agencies. My understanding, this $26.7 million is here because of the revitalization and for the TCHC tenants. We were told from the beginning of this for the TCHC tenants. Shouldn't our voices of the TCHC tenants be heard? I look forward to the rezoning because I want many great things for all the TCHC tenants, including affordable housing, a space for tenants to have business, and many other stuff. More importantly, I want the TCHC tenants to have a strong voice to say what's needed in Regent Park, not to have one group speak on our behalf for everyone. TCHC staff needs to do more work to engage TCHC tenants, and not just with RPNA and CBC. I'm looking forward to the next year where TCHC tenants have direct input into the revitalization plan and community benefits. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for the deputant from the board? Adele.
Kelly, can you speak to this and the status of the community benefit agreement and this process?
Certainly, through the chair. The team on the ground has started consultation with the community back in the summer, mainly on master planning and getting folks aware of what a rezoning is and what are the building blocks of master planning and rezoning, and also to meet our new developer partner. In a parallel track, the team's also been working with CBC, RPNA, and tenants on setting up the launch of the one-year process for the CBA. And it's expected that that work on the community benefits agreement, the one-year process that we committed to in our RFP with Tridel, will be launched in early 2022.
Anything else, Adele? No. Any other? So Paula?
I just have that quick question based on what Kelly had just said. Who's leading that 1 year? Is it Tridel based on their bid that they would do that? Or is it TCHC? And if TCHC, who is it?
It's the TCHC revitalization team, the development and engagement team that will be leading the one-year process.
And what was the arrangement with Tridel around their delivery of community benefits and their own people that they brought to the
Their people will be assisting our team with providing input and responses to the community priorities.
I'm sorry, just tell me that one more time, Kelly.
Sure. The Tridel team has engagement staff as well, and those staff will be working with our engagement team to deliver on this one-year process. They're also charged with coming up with responses to the community priorities.
So in the RFP, I guess we turned over some of that community engagement work to a firm that Tridel has on their, as part of their model. Is that right?
That's correct. Our team on the ground has the connections with our tenants and the ability to have greater access to our tenants, to the buildings, and they'll be working jointly with the Tridel consultant to make sure that we have a very broad, multifaceted engagement approach on the ground to make sure that we're engaging with stakeholder groups and agencies, but I think at the cornerstone will be our tenants, obviously, as well.
I'm not belaboring it, but the model is that the robust tenant engagement portion has been turned over to Tridel, leading that with the assistance of TCH staff. That correct?
We'll be co-leading it, yes.
Co-leading. And what was the dollar value for that award? Maybe you can't tell me that in person, but you can't tell me that. That's fine. Sure, it's not available, but I don't know, this notion that people need to understand a rezoning. I'm finding that a little interesting because Regent Park has been through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. They probably know more about rezoning and master planning than any other TCHC community, given that it was the #1 revite. Could you just comment on that how much time will be devoted to that compared to making sure that there's long-term permanent jobs that are developed out of phases 4 and 5?
So we're committed to a one-year process devoted to community benefits agreement. That's something that we included in our RFP and we've got the commitment for. So the team will be looking at that, has been looking at that over the last number of months, and will be starting that one-year process in early 2022.
And it's through Tridel, through which group is it that they have? Who's their agency that they use?
I'm going to ask Peter Zimmerman, who's the Senior Director on Regent. Peter, can you confirm the name of the consulting firm?
Thank you, Kelly. We're working with a consulting firm called Monumental, who has been selected through an RFP process. They are part of the master planning design team that we are working with in partnership with Tridel. So Monumental is an independent company that we have retained along with Tridel as part of the rezoning. To clarify, the actual engagement with the community regarding community benefits will be led by a working group that will be made up of TCHC tenants, members of the Regent Park Neighborhood Association, and other stakeholders in the community. That will be the group that will lead the engagement process alongside TCHC with the support of Tridel. That group will communicate back to Tridel and TCHC, and their priorities that are identified through that process will be included in a community benefits agreement.
So just to be clear, because the tenants weren't talking about the master planning and the rezoning, Tridel and TCHC have hired Monumental to go through that master planning and all the public engagement regarding master planning. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
Correct. And then there's a second stream, which is the community benefits agreement. That's, I think, the interest of the deputants here today as to what process that looks like. So they don't seem clear on that. So could you just address some of the concerns that were brought forward by tenants this morning? Quickly, I'm sorry to take so much time, but that was what they were talking about, not the rezoning. Mm-hmm.
TCHC is leading those conversations with the various RPNA and CBC groups, and has been for the last number of months. We are committed to working with those stakeholder groups and the broader community, as well as with our counterparts at the city, who work on CBAs in other parts of the city, and the local councillor's office. So we've been having preliminary conversations to set the ground for the one-year process that will be launched in 2022.
Get it. Thank you.
Anna.
Thank you. And if I go into some questions that are in camera, just let me know. I don't think I am, but just to refresh my memory, I have a few of these going through my hands. So the deal that we have with Tridel is they will have to replace all our RGI units, have a community benefits agreement, and then they're allowed to build a certain amount of GFA, correct?
They don't have the obligation to replace our units is actually with TCHC. So through our deal terms, we'll get financially compensated from Tridel, to which we will apply those funds to build the new buildings. But the second part is correct. They are beholden to the CBA.
Okay, so we will have our own contractor. So Tridel will not be building our buildings. We will be building our buildings.
No, Tridel will definitely be building our buildings. They are our partner as well as our construction manager.
So, but if there's any extra costs, what you're saying is they are giving us a financial contribution, then we are hiring them to build these buildings. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct, as part of the overall deal, yes.
So if there's any overrun costs, is still on us, on those buildings?
Yes,
correct.
That's correct.
Okay. And in your deal, did you account for already a value for extra density? is there a dollar value associated with any extra density that the developer might get through the rezoning?
The bids on the RFP, the proposals that we received were based on current density.
So there's no mention whatsoever about extra density? You signed a deal with the developer without mention of extra density?
I feel that we're treading on parts of the deal that
I
may
know.
be confidential.
I know, Mr. Chair, but this is I feel quite important to understand, because I also want to understand the rationale why we are doing the rezoning. I would like to understand from staff why doing the rezoning and costing the rezoning with Tridel. I've seen other deals that is done through the city that we have a clause that says any extra density, we get X, and the developer goes off. Why are we taking on the risk and paying for this rezoning? What was your rationale behind that?
Because TCHC wanted to explore additional density for not added, but for our rental replacement units. We don't quite have enough density for our rental replacement units currently, because we've integrated affordable housing in the earlier phase. That's number one. And number two, through the community priorities report and through engagement over the last number of years, there's community spaces that our TCHC tenants have been requesting. So some of that would inform increased density for TCHC buildings. And then thirdly, you know, TCHC recognizes that we have broader city building objectives to attain through affordable rental. So we want to look at what our options are to capture some additional density for the provision of affordable rental as well.
So what you're saying is the deal currently is negative. So we, as it stands, without any extra density, we cannot cover our costs to replace all the RGI units and the affordable units that we have there. That's what you're saying.
I think I'm just going to flag that in the December 2020 report, we did have a projected business plan that was
Kelly,
in
I
confidence.
know, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
you know, I have
I'm
a
worried
number
that
of
I'm trying to.
deals that go through my hands, and I don't remember the details of every deal, and you guys didn't have it on this report as well. You know, at City Council, we usually have the reports the history of the reports. I don't have this here. I didn't have this. So that's why I'm asking those questions, and I'm just trying to,
Well,
you
we
guys are,
approved the deal.
sorry?
We approved we approved the deal, right?
We did.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to understand the rationale why we're the risk. Do you understand, Tim? We're taking some risk on the rezoning, and and obviously that is related to the deal that was approved, and it might be, you know, I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this. It's just deals are done in different ways, and I just wanted to understand the rationale from city staff.
Through the chair, a rezoning would alleviate a shortfall position or contribute to reducing a shortfall position. Yes.
John. I just want to note that it's 10 to 11 and we haven't started the consent agenda yet.
Yeah. So actually, that's a good point. Why is this on the consent agenda and not on the regular agenda? It's a $2.6 million approval.
I'll take responsibility for that. I looked at the agenda that we had before us today, and we looked for opportunities to move into the consent agenda a number of matters given the time constraints of this meeting to try and leave time for the discussions in the regular agenda that we thought had priority.
Okay, well, it just strikes me that this is pretty important. What lands are being rezoned and from what to what?
The phase 4 and 5 lands in Regent Park are being rezoned. So this is, it's just the land south of Gerrard between River and Parliament, with the exception of the first block adjacent Parliament.
What are they zoned now as, and what are they being rezoned to?
They're currently zoned for mixed use along Gerrard Street to allow for retail at grade. And there's mainly a mid-rise, a low to mid-rise component along Girard. The middle part is actually quite low. And there's what's called tower locations in our zoning. So it allows for certain height in certain places. That was done in 2013 when the phase 3 lands were rezoned.
And so you said they're zoned mixed use now, correct? And what are they being rezoned to be?
I don't right
Why,
now.
I'm trying to understand, why are we going to the city for a rezoning? Why is it necessary?
We're considering the rezoning because of the added density needed to facilitate all of the new priorities that have come online since the 2013 rezoning.
So is it zoned mid-rise and we're going to have it zoned for high density? Is that what it is?
So there's different portions of the site that are zoned differently. The lowest zones are in the middle of the phase 4 and 5 lands along Girard. They step up to what's called tower locations in a few spots. So the team is looking at not necessarily changing a lot of uses, but possibly adding more density to allow for affordable rental to ensure we round out the RGI replacement and then any new community space that is brought forth during this community master planning process.
Okay, and how many additional units are being added as a result of the rezoning?
That we're not there yet. That's what we're working on now.
So I'm a little confused. You're asking for $2.6 million and we don't know how many additional units we're asking for through the rezoning?
The 2.6 refers to the full costs of the rezoning team to submit and complete and get approved the application for rezoning. So it's the architecture team, urban design, engineering staff needed to facilitate the rezoning application.
So we have to spend the master planning urban design group, for which is 1.4 million. We have to spend that in order to know how many units we're going to get. Is that essentially what you're telling me?
In order to, yes, to know, but also to get approved from city planning, all of those units.
Have we held discussions with city plannings prior to this, or seeking this approval from the board?
We have begun conversations with city planning, and the local councillor is convening a roundtable of city planning, design, transportation, PFNR, as well as Create Toronto staff.
Okay, so when did it come about that the rezoning, when was it decided that the rezoning was necessary and that the added density would be desirable? That must have been a board decision, or was that a City of Toronto decision?
That was done through the exploratory work after December. So between January and over the summer, the team looked at the options and the priorities known to the team in the community now about what sort of densities we'd need in order to try to create all of the priorities that folks want now in Regent Park. So we've been doing that exploratory work. We've come to understand that we can't achieve all of that additional space through what's called a minor variance, which is using your rezoning and going to committee of adjustment. We actually have to submit a more fulsome application. So that work was done over the last 6 months.
So Adele, when's your next meeting?
Dara, when's our next meeting?
It just feels this is, I mean, to be honest with you, this level of detail is a little too much for the board. That doesn't mean it's not.
Mr. Chair,
John, let me finish. Let me finish, John. Let me finish, John. Let me finish, John. But it is an important series of questions which should be appropriately dealt with at the board committee that deals with these kinds of issues, which is why I think it might be appropriate, given the questions that are being asked, to have BIFAC dig into this.
And in fairness, John is on the BIFAC committee, so.
Yeah. Although I was not in attendance at the first meeting I was supposed to be at, so I just moved over there. So that's why I haven't seen this report until it came here.
November 3rd.
Dara, do you have a calendar in front of you?
November 3rd.
3rd.
So does that timing create problems for this? I just think there's lots of questions here, obviously. But I think it's BIFAC's the right place for that to occur.
So, I mean, I can ask my further questions offline. It's just, I'm concerned that they're asked, the sequence of events and the spending and the ask of the budget, it seems a little misaligned to me, and maybe I'm just having trouble understanding the process.
Mr.
No, but I think there are other questions here. I don't, I mean, it's so
Mr. Chair, if I could just make a comment, I think you're right that these are important questions. The MOU is signed. First, I want to say that I think the rezoning is absolutely the way to go. I think it is a good approach. There's definitely space to get more out of this. My concern and what I was trying to understand is I don't understand why we are taking so much risk. I've seen other deals being structured that the developer takes more of a leadership role. Rezonings happen all the time. Developers buy sites and then go for rezonings all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was just trying to.
Yeah, no, that was, I understood that. And which is why I think, there are, and obviously part of the answers relate to confidential matters. I just think getting this to BIFAC is to have those dug into is the right thing to do. Absent there being some horrible problem we create by delaying the decision for a month.
Would the board's intention be that by referring the matter to BIFAC can make the ultimate decision?
Yes,
the only
that would be my position, but obviously the board would have to agree with that.
Kelly, does that create a timeline issue? I see Peter nodding his head that it does.
Someone's nodding.
Peter, perhaps you could articulate just at a high level what sort of challenge that creates.
Yeah, Kelly, and through the chair, we are right now in the process of the community engagement process related to the rezoning. We have begun the work, and again, I think there is a conversation that needs to happen in camera to understand the rationale for what we have embarked upon. But right now, if we were to not have this approval, we would be forced to suspend the work that we have undertaken and we're proposing to take forward through the rest of this year. We would need to delay the application, and it would further delay the delivery of the first buildings in phases 4 and 5 in Regent Park.
Well, then it sounds like the solution might be to do both, that we then approve to allow you to continue the work, but it also goes to BIFAC to answer some of the questions the board has clearly got. And I think probably, Adele, it sounds like it probably needs a confidential session at BIFAC in order for the board to dig in. So that would be my suggestion. Councillor Fletcher.
I just wanted to be clear based on what Mr. Zimmerman had said, that this is less than a 1 month delay to get to BIFAC. And if BIFAC gets empowered to proceed, and that obviously we don't have a developer that's going to take us to the Ontario Land Tribunal. It's our partner. So having a little more time should not really be a problem. I'm not sure it's characterizing that as an issue is one thing when you're in a private development situation, but we're in a partnership situation. So I'm not sure that it has the same impact, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add a couple of things. What's in front of us, it's the request to the 2.6 million, which is already part of the MOU. So I think that there is time for us to dive into the deal because staff have not allocated the price and cost of extra zoning, but there's certain things that have been established. So I think that there's work to be done. I agree with your suggestion that we actually could approve these here and then take it back to BIFAC to see how we can look into some of these things and how to move forward. But the MOU as the MOU, I feel like in order to proceed with, we have an agreement with the developer that we've established, and in order to proceed with the rezoning, which is the right way to go, this is what we've agreed. Am I wrong, Kelly?
You are correct.
Okay,
So
so
there's
do you
the
want
next
to,
phases, how we deal with this.
right.
So
So do you want to
send it
move
back.
that, Anna? Do you want to move that, or Councillor Nunziata?
Sure.
This is getting very confusing. Just the recommendation that we have before us is to authorize additional spending, right? So if we don't authorize this this additional spending, so that means that the rezoning will not go through. That stops the rezoning process.
That's correct. We have funds up to $1 million, and after, which won't be enough to get us through an entire rezoning process.
So we want to go through the rezoning process, but it was indicated that that amount is actually for staff, putting forward the application, right? That's all for staffing and whatever is needed to go through the process, correct?
It's to hire consultants,
right,
to prepare all the plans and the studies.
So, and that's $2,649,000 for that. So I agree with Councillor Bylaw. I mean, I think that we could send it back to committee to ask some of these questions. Maybe at the same time, we can ask maybe city staff. I don't know if anybody is here from city staff to answer some of the questions. But if we don't approve this recommendation, then the process doesn't proceed, which we don't want to delay the rezoning application, correct? Yeah, so, okay. Yeah, and I agree with Councillor Bylaw. I think we can do both.
Okay, so why don't we make that a motion from Councillor Bylaw? Is it all right for you, Councillor Nunziata, to second that? Okay, do you have some wording there, Dara?
I do. Simply added to the last paragraph a phrase that in addition to the recommendations in the report, there would be a requirement for staff to report back to BIFAC further on the matters raised in this report. I've left it quite general so that we're not limiting the ability of BIFAC to get any questions that it might have addressed.
That's satisfactory to you, Anna? Okay. And to the seconder, yes? Okay, all those in favor of the motion with that? Pass, thank you. Okay, so we only have 3 more consent agenda items.
The next deputant is in relation to item 2J, and I believe Ms. Kunzman is on the line. Ms. Kunzman, this is in respect of the report on the Community Safety Advisory Subcommittee Charter. You have 5 minutes.
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to speak on the item regarding security, or rather special constables that are in our community, St. Jamestown. And I really agree with one of the last speakers who says that the tenants need to have a greater voice, especially where it comes to how they were going to have a change in the rules. Now, I'm happy to see that a major step was taken, again, with Greenwind having lost their 2,501 units because they refused to follow any kind of rule of law whatsoever. But it's because they're a private company and they don't have to, they can do whatever they want, and you can be blind and tenant and they don't care. They just evict people based mainly on money. And the same thing's happening, however, with the special constables. So I'm concerned as they bring in the new system. First of all, they're trying to evict everybody much faster because of the transition to Toronto housing. So I'm being caught in that shuffle. And the special constables have been sort of, they're in a committee this afternoon with Greenwind every week, evictions committee, with an evictions crew of tenants who really aren't supposed to be doing evictions. And my worry is that after making this big step to solve the problem with Greenwind, that we're going to now have a new problem with the special constables because they indicated to me, like, I had my door broken into a couple weeks ago, and they refused to make the report. I had fun this morning with someone grabbed my Apple laptop and ran with it. He said, call police. So I did that in the elevator. He said, yeah, like he needs the police, and they don't come. So it's the same problem. And then they run up all the evidence that 800 pages they wrote. So my concern I wanted to bring up here is also about the charter, that all these actions are in contravention of the charter, which is something that these special constables, I understand they're CSIS. They're not really, the police are CSIS. Everybody's CSIS down there in the downtown east. And there's no law with the way they operate. But yet we have a charter. And I'd like to see some of these enforced. Like I discussed it with some of the tenants, and they said they feel their freedom of speech is being violated, even the eviction crews, that they've been told if they make any noise about anything, they will not be allowed back if they tear down the buildings to do revitalization. They have to they're not allowed to voice their concerns, make complaints. However, in the charter, it says that the employees should be listening to tenants in an open manner. So there's some direct controversy there, where the charter is not being followed, even though it's displayed in the lobby of my building at 325. Also, if you Google 325, at least with my malware, there's apartments being sold in the building. You can make an appointment with an agent in a company, Redfin or something from Seattle, and to buy units. And they had seized my ODSP this month, seized it, and in a committee through this ComSoc that goes through Toronto Housing, is in the employment office. They have ComSoc positions where they hire special constables and eviction crews, and then those people then cash out the $350,000 for ODSP, try to put the person in jail, which they're trying to do to me, and never give them their papers, their files, or nothing. And my questions too, also, I believe our new CEO is Sharma, Jag Sharma. He has a science degree too, like me, but I'm asking you this question. Does it make any sense to you that I'm being told I'll be in court for non-payment of rent at the end of the month? However, Greenman refuses to give me a copy of my accounts whatsoever, because the only thing, they just refuse to give it to me, and there's other illegal things going on, illegal rentals and things of that nature is their explanation. But the fact remains, they're going to now take me to court because I didn't pay the rent. So, how does that make any sense mathematically? How can you pay the rent if they don't tell you how much money you owe? And there's not much I can do. It came up in CBC too about that problem. When the housing wants to evict you, they just will close your account, say you were evicted, never give you your documents, and there's no account to pay the rent money into, and you get evicted. So
Okay.
I'd like to ask you, since
Thank
you said you're going to try to solve some of these problems, taking it on the task.
Thank you. Your time is up. Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe
Thank you very much.
just maybe what we can do is I don't know, but maybe have someone at the staff level just follow up to see to what extent individual issues. I don't think it's fair to the tenant to discuss those kinds of issues in a public session, but maybe someone.
Yeah, but
can
we're
follow
changing the rules, and the rules
no,
is
no,
going
no,
to affect
hang on.
everybody
Yeah,
who's
hang
being
on,
affected
hang on,
the same
please.
way.
Hang on,
It's
please. You've had
illegal
your
eviction.
time. Hang on, please. Does any director have any question or comment? Councillor Nunziata.
That one of the staff members contact the tenant directly and try to resolve some of the issues that she has.
Yeah, I think we've agreed on that. Anybody else? Okay, great. Thank you. So I think so a motion is it a receive, Jay, or?
2J is a motion to approve the Community Safety Advisory Subcommittee Charter.
Okay. Councillor Nunziata move. Seconded by Councillor Fletcher. All in favor? Thank you.
While Well, we don't have deputants. I think one of the board members wanted to hold 2K.
Yeah, I think that was Councillor Byla was one, and then I can't remember, was it someone else? But yes, so
John.
2K. John, correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. So why don't we start with Councillor Byla and then go to Mr. Campbell.
Thank you. On the key deliverables, I would just like to see if we can also have the comparison on the ratio of frontline staff per unit and management per unit to compare how we're doing, and also the overall budget per unit. So you have a series of key deliverables here, but I would like to understand how much does TCHC spend to provide housing, social housing versus other providers, and also the ratio of frontline staff and management per unit. And all these things that you mentioned in here, which are good as well. So I don't know if I need a motion.
I don't think so. I think we've got them. I think they're hearing you and they'll take notes and they will respond. Councillor, I think it was Nunziata, and then Brian, and then, oh, sorry, I apologize, it was John, and then Brian.
Okay, so what is the what's going to be the cost? What budget has been set for the hiring of the consultant?
Thank you, Chair Murphy. I think I may need some help from my my staff on this one. I'm not sure that I certainly understood the scope, but I don't know whether the budget had been set aside for the study.
And I know, I mean, it's one of these asks that often arises at City Council and other places where the ask is made without understanding what the cost is of getting the answer. And so while the information is important and it could help inform future decisions, I'm wondering if it's possible that staff people undertake this. Is it necessary to hire an outside consultant? And also, I think it's important to know what's going to be the scope and the breadth of information that's going to be gathered, because that will, of course, make a difference on the overall budget. I mean, how many social housing providers are we going to scope out? Are we going to look at European examples? Are we going to look at only North American examples? There's a lot of questions here that I think that the report doesn't cover off.
So
Thank
we
you,
are,
Director Campbell. Yeah, sorry, and Sheila and Paula, if you wouldn't mind.
yeah, through you, or to you, Director Campbell, we are in the process of drafting the RFP. If this report is received today, we will draft the RFP with the deliverables that are noted. I just want to say what's important for us is and why we believe we need to go to an external consultant is we want to ensure that we're comparing apples to apples. And we want a third-party lens on this work. It is work that is outside of the skill set of the complement that we currently have.
So in doing the RFP, I mean,
Hang on a sec. Are you finished, Sheila? Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say we draft the RFP, we'll go out to market, and the results of the RFP will come back and be approved either by DAC, if it's below the threshold, PAC, committee, or board.
So if we're going into an RFP, what then will be the budget?
Paula, have you set a budget?
Yes, through the chair. And Mr. Campbell, we have 150,000 allocated to do this work. Also, we have begun to do some of the work internally so that when we get to the scoping phase and have the RFP completed, we'll have some of the information from a TCHC perspective to share.
And do we know if the scope, you're still working on the scoping, you said, so you're not sure if it's going to be looking at North American housing providers or European or, other areas?
So what, oh, sorry. Just wanted to say, Director, that what's important is for us to find housing providers that have a similar scope and tenant base that we do. So are those housing providers in Ontario, on the continent, or do we have to go farther afield?
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking at this report, first of all, I think it was asked over 2 years ago for this. It's taken a long time and I'm not sure why. Don't need to hear that, but it's a concern that it has taken so long to get to this point. I think that the question that the Deputy Mayor asked about looking at the ratios with frontline staff and management per unit would have been one of the core pieces of the scope that should be provided here today in this report, and it's not. So that's of concern to me. And I'd just like to suggest, and not that sometimes there's things, and Tim, you know, what is it? Noses in, fingers out. Is that the one that you say all the time? I've got it right. But there's certain times, like in the previous discussion earlier in camera and other times where it's important that the board actually has a bit more of an oversight role, and that we really want to make sure that's clean and clear parameters, scope around any of the other housing providers. So I would just like to suggest, Mr. Chair, that in this work, that the chairs of BIFAC, because it's got to do with money, and the chair of tenant services, because it's got to do with service delivery, actually assist in looking at the scope, making sure all those pieces are in there, and that the key parts that need to be compared are the pieces in the RFP. And there may be other things that might be nice to have, but aren't necessary to have. So I hope you won't see that as heretical. But I think that would be very, very helpful in the development of the RFP and the rollout of this comparison.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, this is intended to produce information valuable to both management and the board for policy purposes.
Yes.
So I think having the board make sure, I mean, what the questions it wants answered are asked makes sense to me. So I think that's a good suggestion. I think, was it Brian had his hand up as well?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Tim. Although I agree that this would be really valuable information, I have concerns similar to John, whether in fact we'll be able to actually acquire this information, as I believe it's going to be very challenging to be able to do apples to apples with other organizations based on their priorities and their strategic plans and what they. So I just want to temper our desire for this information, and even with a consultant and someone going out, whether that just be Ontario, Canada, international, whether we will really get the information that we're hoping to get. And so I just want to temper our expectations because I think that's going to be very, very challenging, no matter whether it's just staff or staff and chairs of those two committees. I think we can set out our expectations. Whether we can achieve them, I think is going to be really difficult.
Yes, we'll find out.
Knowing how different organizations approach organizing their operations.
So my only question then, so I think the suggestion Paul made is a good one, and we don't need a motion, I don't think, for that. My only question to you, John, is from a budget perspective, are you proposing, and just a suggestion, that we kind of have an upside price? So in other words, I gather they budgeted 150, and because you can spend a lot of money digging for that last 5% of information, and it doesn't give you much, to Brian's point. And so I'm just wondering if that's a suggestion we're considering, to say we're setting, a budget envelope, and they do the best they can within the budget envelope, or.
Well, I don't have any suggestions. I mean, staff's come up with a figure of 150,000. I'm not sure how that was arrived at, what the time frame is, if that's to be 6 months or 9 months or a year, if it's include travel to Germany and Austria, or,
We have phones and Zoom, so.
Yeah, we have
Certainly
all
no
that stuff.
travel.
But there's nothing like being on the ground and seeing it, is it, Jag? You got to get there and you got to know what's going on, right? So
Let me put it this way. I'm prepared to move a motion that there's no travel for this.
Tim, I saw that it looked like more comparators as to Hamilton and Ottawa and maybe Vancouver, some of the Canadian comparators, not international. That was in the report. Am I wrong?
Paula, Sheila? I
So
would have thought to get comparators, we would have had to go outside Canada.
Yeah,
No.
and I'm
Why?
sorry, because we are, if you look at the consideration of the following areas: methodology, standardized methodology, consistent measure of metrics, so that would capture Deputy Mayor bylaws considerations. Tenant profile, we have a tenant profile that we provide services to that is that needs to be understood, that may be different from Hamilton, different from Ottawa, so we need to understand that. Municipal profile, same thing, and the service model, including identification of operations, corporate services. So we are the largest housing provider in the country, soon to be smaller when seniors are transferred out, but they're really, we found it hard to find a comparable in Ontario, in the work that we did looking at national housing providers. We found it different to find a comparable. We believe we're closely aligned with good work that's happening in the UK. So we may.
So I'm just wondering, sorry to cut you off, Sheila, but I'm just wondering, given, frankly, we're bogged down in this, if we should just say, take up, I think it was Councillor Fletcher's suggestion, and just say, look, why don't you take scope, budget to Adele and John, and if they're satisfied that it's a reasonable set of questions, a reasonable scope and a reasonable price, that'd be good for the rest of us.
Can I just add, Tim, if that's what you're moving, also that group can have access to the deputy city manager, because Brian's got a point. Nobody wants to tell you what they're doing, but these are all for looking. And understand, Sheila, that we have some complex, there's kind of the core, and then there's the add-ons for the complexity, and that has to be taken into account. But when we're looking at just core delivery, that should be pretty easy to get to your apples and apples. And our city manager, for sure, and our deputy are able to reach into all of the public housing organizations in order to look at that core model. So I think we're getting closer. I'd just like to add that on, Tim, and be happy to move that that's the direction we send this off in. If Adele and John
Adele, you
agree.
have your hand up?
Oh, Jack has his
Adele, you
finger
have your
up.
hand up?
I did have my hand up, and I think it goes to Brian's point. What is the incentive for these organizations to even share their information with us? Like, is this a report that's going to be available to them as well? Or like when you talk about going far afield,
Don't go
Sheila,
far afield.
like, but why would they want to share this information with us? Like, if we're retaining a consultant, do we know that they'll
If
even
they don't,
get?
they don't.
So we have no assurance that anybody will even give us the actual accurate information so that we can compare.
We don't have commitments from the other housing providers. We have had discussions with other housing providers that are willing to work with us, but we don't have commitments. We need to identify them, make sure that we're comparing like for like, approach them. This is a significant body of work.
But
So if I may
would
help.
think that we would need some of that legwork done first before we hire a consultant?
Through you,
Like,
Chair Murphy, and to address perhaps help with the question. First off, Councillor Fletcher, actually, I had a conversation yesterday afternoon with the Deputy City Manager along those lines. And number two, many of the housing providers that would even be close to the scale or closer to the scale of Toronto Community Housing would be associated with municipalities. And I think from a good peer perspective that we would have a good opportunity to engage not only the housing providers, but if we needed assistance, the municipalities as well to help get some good comparables. So I think we will have good inroads into those organizations in order to get information to help us.
Yeah,
I think
it
the
does sound
chair
like.
may be having technical issues.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. I just think it sounds like TCHC has to do a lot of this legwork to establish the cooperation with these other providers. It's not just about hiring a consultant.
And through the chair, once again, to you, Director Emery, as Paula had indicated earlier, there's going to be a great deal of legwork that we're going to do. But as far as being reciprocal in sharing some of that information with them as well, I think that that is very often the case when we are reaching out. I know in the municipal sector it's the same, where when we do approach other municipalities, we commit to sharing our information with them as well. So typically there is a reciprocal ask that comes out of that.
So is that going to be done confidentially, or does this become a public document?
I guess I'd have to understand whether there was a reason to keep it confidential. There may be a time period in which that information might be in more of a closed environment, but from an overall staffing perspective, it would depend on whether there would be anything that would actually keep it in confidential or closed.
Mr. Smith, I think in the chair's absence, you may be chairing the meeting as vice chair. So I think you're on mute.
So, can you people hear me now?
We can hear you.
Brian, you're on mute. We lost Brian? Yeah, we lost Brian. It's a technical problems day. Apologies. So I've lost track of where we're at. So
I think I saw Councillor Nunziata's hand up.
Yeah, Councillor.
I think we should have all been consultants. Just a question. Staff commented earlier that a lot of the work has been done in-house, and there's a lot more work that you can do in-house, correct, Paula?
That's correct.
Right. So when you have allocated $150,000 in the budget to hire the consultant, so being at that there's a lot of work that's going to be done in-house when you go out for the RFP, the cost could even be less than what you budgeted, correct?
Correct, Councillor Nunziata. And in fact, some of the outreach to the other housing providers has been done initially just to see if there is comfort in sharing information. The consultants would really help us with the analysis, defining kind of the core set of comparisons that we would look at, and then having a third party that is kind of neutral in the way they come back to us with the information. So yeah, I don't anticipate, based on what we've done to date, that would run any more than 150,000, which is why we allocated that budget.
Yeah, and it may not even be 150. It could be less, depending on the work that has been done in-house. Correct?
Absolutely, Councillor, and that would be our plan, would be to try and minimize costs, not to increase them, and see what else we might be able to do internally as well.
Okay, thank you.
So can we just do this so where we just get John and Adele to just look at it? We say you have up to 150, and if you can make it less, even better. and they review this, you know, just what kinds of questions you're asking in light of what the comments have been made, and so we spend a lot of time on this item.
Fine with me.
Okay. So we'll moved by Adele, seconded by Brian. All in favor, aye. And Dara will catch up with the language. We have 2L.
And we have two deputants in relation to this item. The first deputant is Tom Robson. Mr. Robson, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me clearly?
We can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. I've submitted a written document that you people have, but I might add one thing. When all of this pandemic started, the public health people said that it was a responsibility of landlords to make sure that people obeyed these rules. They didn't have to enforce them themselves, but they had to get somebody in a position to do it. And you've got security people in this building at 423 Yonge Street that do it. It happens that the two people that I've talked about in that document are downstairs right now. I've got something else to add that happened yesterday after I submitted that document. Okay. These people are not complying with the 6-foot rule at all. And yesterday, after I'd submitted that document, I on the second floor, the elevator opened and two people wanted to were standing outside. There was 2 of us on the elevator already. I said, this elevator isn't big enough for 2 people. It's 5 feet wide and 7 feet deep. You can't get more than 2 people on it. Keep 6 feet apart. The woman I talked about, I don't know what her name is, security guard, she tried to push me out of the way, and the woman who was a resident of the building, the other woman, said, I can't get on there, it's only allowed for 2 people. Then those 2 people, the resident and the security guard, had a huge yelling argument about what the rule was. And the security guard kept saying, it's 4 people, it's 4 people, it's 4 people. It isn't, but that's what she keeps saying. She also thinks that it's a City of Toronto bylaw that says that 6 feet is the rule, which means that she doesn't know what she's talking about. Just as an aside, she tried to push her way onto the elevator, pushed me out of the way. It happens I've got shingles, nerve damage, and happened to hit that part of my chest. I've never been stabbed with a knife, but when that happens, it feels like it. If she does that again, I'm going to have to step in and do something. I don't like that. Essentially, they're putting people's lives at risk. They put 5 people on an elevator that is only supposed to have 2. And this is housing staff that's on the elevator. I mentioned that both 2 times that happened just within the last week. You got any questions on it? Hello?
Sorry, we can hear you again. Looks like the chair is having some technical issues. Mr. Smith, can you assume the role of the chair? Mr. Robson, did you have anything else to add?
No, that's it. I'm just saying, I said in that document that when the way that they're behaving is like somebody pointing a loaded gun at you. It's the same thing. Somebody with carrying the virus forces their way onto an elevator and it's crowded and you can't keep 6 feet apart. We're doomed.
Are there any, I'll ask the question, are there any questions of the deputant? Mr. Smith, I think you're on mute. Thank you, Mr. Rob. I don't hear any questions. Mr. Smith, I think you're on mute. The next deputant is Lena Valenzuela. Ms. Valenzuela, are you on the line?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Last time I deputed was on July 31st, 2018, about safety in my community. I was pregnant at the time. Hello, I am Lena. I'm a single mother born in this city and a TCHC resident. Here and now, I want to acknowledge that we're on stolen land in the midst of understanding, resolving, and reconciling relations with our indigenous hosts. A legacy of genocide and complex institutional challenges lay before us all, and systemic accountability has been lacking. I am also indigenous of Mapuche ancestry and caretaker to my elders who face torture, trauma, and violent displacement. However, I do not have the tools to rationalize the immeasurable pain my indigenous sisters are facing. Bringing safety to their lives, communities, and children while experiencing daily violences in places they have to call home. In this city, institutional barriers impact and hinder Black women, indigenous women, and women of color from raising children in peaceful environments, especially in housing, which is a microcosm of all the problems in this city. This has worsened with COVID. I am here to address item 2L and raise the issue of increased violence since COVID towards single Black mothers, single indigenous mothers, single mothers of color in my community. The vulnerability and pressure we are facing since COVID deserves not only the attention of this board, our local management office, Greenwood, but also from our municipal representatives. We depend on you all to live in safety. These are 4 incidents of what I, an underhoused single mother, experienced since the beginning of COVID. This is painful to articulate, so please bear with me. And I thank you in advance for your patience. I have also emailed some of this information to you. Number 1, mid-February 2020, early afternoon, my child has a high fever. Doctor suggested to bring the stroller into small unit, not to bring the stroller into our small unit until fully disinfected. I remind you that nobody knew much about the
Ms.
situation
Valenzuela,
then.
we're having a horrible time trying to hear what you're saying. I think that it may be a technical issue. Maybe if we pause for a second and let you start again. Can you try?
Amazing.
I don't know if it's just me or if other board members are having problems.
I can hear from Dara. I heard everything that Ms. Valenzuela has said. Thank you.
I apologize. I'll be quiet.
Thank you.
Should I continue?
Please.
Or should I start again?
I think the board members could hear you. It was just me. I apologize for interrupting. If you can start, if you can continue.
That's okay. I just really need to finish my statement. Thank you. Incident number 1, mid-February, early afternoon. My child has a very high fever. Doctor suggested not to bring the stroller into our small unit until fully disinfected and to isolate immediately. Within an hour of our arrival, stroller disappeared. With my baby in my arms in distress, I go downstairs to notify management before calling police to report a theft. Manager and superintendent were both in the lobby without masks. Mostly women, my neighbors, were in the lobby area, all masked. I shared that my child might have COVID. Manager ignored me and asked for my unit number and then insisted many times we go into his office. Many times I said, no, it's not safe. He reprimanded me about my stroller in hallway and that he would not return it. The superintendent began complaining to me that his legs hurt and that I was privileged to be leaving my stroller out or leaving my stroller outside. No one knocked on my door nor called me or asked me what is going on. I depend on my stroller like a vehicle. My 1-year-old was very sick, so I left the lobby in tears and unresponsive. Women in the lobby witnessed this and shook their heads. The stroller appeared outside without a knock or a call within a few hours. 2 weeks later, it disappeared. During the pandemic, I had to purchase a new one. Incident number 2, July 18, 2020, 8:30 a.m., physical assault to my person. During my morning routine, I did hear shouting in the fire escape stairwell. Unfortunately, this was quite normal. Returning to my unit from the garbage chute, I lock eyes with complete strangers through the window of the fire escape stairway. For seconds, he opened the door and jumped me, reaching for my phone. I screamed for help. He smashed my phone and my arm against the floor repeatedly while on top of me, saying, "Don't film me." I never did film him. My mom came out and he took off the same way he came. I couldn't get up. Ambulance and police were called. I had his bite marks on my left hand, fingers, and forearm. My ligaments of my right knee tore completely. That's my ACL. This is a permanent injury. I couldn't walk for months, and after, only with a walker, I could no longer take care of my elders. I will never be able to run. Investigation was open. Detective Constable number 11294 is in charge of that investigation. Number 3, incident in March 22, 2021, this year. Graffiti on the 37th floor, fire escape stairwell in front of our unit. Graffiti consisted of swastika and red, excuse my language, FUCK, Islam, lazy horse, bastard kids. My neighbor, who is a Muslim mother, called police. Hate crime investigation was open. DC Detective Constable number 10276 is in charge of that investigation. Pictures of graffiti are attached. Superintendent saw this 2 days prior, never notified any, and nor removed graffiti only until police was called and appeared. Incident number 4, July 23rd, 2021, 9 a.m. This is my last point. Verbal violence directed at my child by a couple who live on the other side of our floor, so basically our neighbor. Neighbor kneeled face to face towards my child, strapped in the stroller, violently screaming at her without a mask to shut up repeatedly. I told him to stop, step away, and asked him what the problem was and to talk to me, not my child. He said, keep your kid out of the hallway. Every morning I have to hear all your kids, amongst other things. CSCU was called and they responded and talked to the neighbors, requesting them not to approach our door or our persons again. The situation has worsened and continues through harassment and threats. All families to this tenant expressed concerns of continued verbal violence. They all make their own complaints to management and no response ever received by any of us. These incidents represent only a fraction of what my community has been experiencing. I basically have no confidence or trust on management to address any of my concern, and therefore I consider notifying them a waste of my time, and it only leads to experiencing more violence in the form of disrespect and disregard from them. Therefore, I am requesting a commitment from this board to respond to incidents like this. We feel harmed, we feel unseen, and we feel unheard. My requests are as follows: to seek more transparency from our local management office into how it deals with issues of violence, and request an independent inquiry into the culture of how our local management office, Greenwind, deals and relates with all members of our community. 2, to ask security community unit to prioritize issues of violence affecting single mothers and caretakers in general, to work with us. Are protocols inclusive and relevant to our lived experiences? Does SCU have any real acting power? Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, feel free to follow up with me.
So I think Brian is still having audio problems, that we can't hear him. So I'm going to ask, just as another committee chair, Ms. Imrie, would you mind assuming the role of chair with the board support? I mean, I'm trying to, it looks like Tim is still having problems and Brian is still having problems. I can ask the question, are there any questions of the deputant from board members?
Yeah, I just have a quick question.
Sure. Is Adele going to assume the chair, or is John going to assume? Adele?
Sure, I can do it, or if John wants to do it. Are there any questions for this deputant?
Yes. I am so sorry to hear all this happen to you. My quick question is, did you complain, and to whom, and what was the outcome?
About which incident are you asking me?
The last incident that you're talking about.
With the neighbor?
Yeah.
Yes. I dealt with the chief of security community unit, and they went to the neighbor to ask them not to approach us again. He has behaved in passive ways, trying to instigate some kind of conflict, has not received any engagement from me. His wife followed me to the elevator one day, put her feet on the door so the elevator doors would not close, and started telling, without a mask, started telling me, they're anti-maskers also, that I don't know who they are and who I'm messing with. And I just kept quiet, shouting at me. This is every time I'm on my way to the daycare to leave my child. So I called the security community unit again, and I also did call police to make a complaint, a report. To no avail. For the first time that the man approached my daughter, the constables did get back to me. When I reported about the incident in the elevator, knowing that I was under a camera and maybe they could look at footage, I received no response. Constable did try and reach me. I tried to reach her several times, and there is a registration of that, but I never got a response again. So then I went to make a complaint to police. And that's all that happened, nothing else. This morning, basically these neighbors wait to hear.
Hi there.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
That's all I have to say. Yeah.
Could you just, sorry, Adele, could you just clarify that she said, and now I've come to make a complaint to you? Did you say that, Ms. Valenzuela? I just didn't hear that sentence.
No.
No?
Can you hear it?
Brian, we can all hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. So
could you just read that last piece again? I'm just unclear. You said you'd gone to this person, this person, this person, and now you're coming to tell us. Okay. Is that what you said? I just didn't hear you.
Okay. In regards to the last incident?
Well, I think Ms. Farad said, please tell us who you told, and then you were telling us what you'd done. And I'm just...
I immediately called the security. I actually first talked to the security person present in the lobby of our building as I was making my way out after the verbal harassment happened the first time. I called SCU. I also called police that first morning. SCU responded by going to the neighbors and telling them not to approach us again or come to our doors. They live on the other side of the hallway. Then this caused things to worsen, and the couple, the wife, began saying things to me. I called SCU at least 4 times, at least. When she stopped the elevator from going, I asked her to let us go, and she just wanted to threaten me. Again, my child has always been present during these incidents. I was never informed about what SCU did.
Adele, I think we need to.
And I did call police.
Well, I think Brian's back as chair.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. I just want to suggest that because these are serious issues, that whether Sheila could contact the tenant and investigate and report back to Tenant Services Committee, where there can be a more fulsome discussion with regards to these issues and hopefully resolve and take whatever actions are required. So I wondered whether that would be satisfactory with the
I think that's a very
tenants.
good recommendation.
Yeah. So if that's acceptable to Ms. Yan and Sheila, if that could be done through you, that would be great. And hopefully be able to solve these very serious matters and make whatever adjustments through Tenant Services Committee. So
It sounds real. My name's Sheila Penny. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and I will contact you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you to all of you for listening.
Sorry,
that's the final deputant on this matter.
I'm sorry I was locked out. My thing said I was able to speak, but obviously you couldn't hear me. So I did actually have one suggestion back onto Kay I just wondered whether through AMFA or through the Municipal Community Services Group, there may be some value in approaching it from a wider perspective. So it was just a suggestion I was going to make in your looking at that issue. Marcel, you have a question?
Just a comment on what you were saying. There's a site, I think it's done through one of the universities, but it's called the Homeless Hub. And it has all the different provinces and types of social housing and supportive housing and services that are provided. And I was just checking it out. It has everything from BC to the East Coast. It might be a good resource to check out.
Thank you.
Brian, since you said that, I just want to hop in and say, because most of the social housing is RGI based, there's a service manager for all of the social housing. The city has its own, the city is the service manager for TCHC, and a lot of that information is going to be with the service manager. Really, we're not reinventing anything. They have it for RGI.
I guess all I was trying to say, not only be valuable for us, but hopefully for other municipalities as well in terms of making decisions about their operations. So it just may get more buy-in if we use one of those vehicles for acquiring the information. So Dara, I think we finished with all the deputations with regards to item 2.
L.
We still have L?
Sorry, that was 2L. We finished with the deputations on 2L. I don't know.
I think that's the last of the items in the consent agenda, I believe.
It is.
Correct.
We just need a motion to.
I'll move receipt of the item. I'll move receipt of their COVID response update.
Great. Thanks, John. Seconded by Councillor Nunziata. Thank you. Tim, are you back? No? So we have item that's item 3, which is business arising. Is there any items there in the business arising?
Yes, I have very quickly. Item 5 from the September 14th from tenant service. Although we're coming up to tenant services. Sorry, that's fine. Thanks.
Okay. So
motion to receive.
Receive with regards to item 3. Do I have a motion mover? Thank you, Paula. Seconded, Councilor Nunziata. All in favor? Motion carried. Item 4, outcome of collective bargaining with QP. I think we have Barbara is online. So Barbara, if you'd like to speak to that and report back on that item.
Yes, thank you through the chair. So we are here today to seek the board's approval on the agreement that has been negotiated and now recently ratified with by QP Local 79 membership. We reached this tentative agreement on August 20th with the assistance of a mediator, and this agreement is based on the approved mandate that staff received from our governance committee and aligns with the agreements that have been reached with our labor partners, Local 416, in the spring of 2020, and also aligns with the outcome of the collective bargaining of our labor partners with the City of Toronto.
So are there any questions? We have a motion to accept the recommendations on page 104. Yes, Councillor Nunziata.
Moving the recommendation.
The recommendations are to ratify, authorize staff to make necessary adjustments, authorize public release of a confidential attachment, and for staff to take all necessary actions.
Yes, thank you. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Brian, can we just thank Ms. Schulman? It was her first time that she led negotiations in her role at TCHC. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you to the
Thanks
team.
very much, Barbara. Bring it to a conclusion, and it was quite successful, and we stayed aligned with the city's direction as well. That's great.
Thank you.
Item 5, President CEO status. Jag, you're on for this.
Thank you, Chair Smith, and I'll go as quickly as I can. I know we do have quite a bit on the agenda today, but it's a pleasure to be back to the board and talking about my first 60 days. By and large, I have a great story to tell about a great organization with great challenges. I won't deny that, and certainly, most importantly, great people, including tenants and staff. From an agenda perspective, we're going to go through the first 60 days and then talk about my observations. My apologies, now I'm having system issues. Sorry, I'm back now. Looking at my early observations and then just talking about some key focus opportunities. And, what a fantastic time to join the organization. The foundation that's being set with respect to the restructuring and the commitment to service excellence is one just to be built on. I'd like to start by sharing my gratitude to the team for such a rich onboarding. And it was so much focused in what I believe in most, which is ensuring that I'm spending time out in the field with our tenants as well as our frontline staff. And I got the opportunity to truly begin to understand the businesses and some of the challenges that they have. I certainly want to give a few shout outs for some of the experiences that I've had. And there's a few people that I'll name, and this is by far from all of the individuals that I've met, but people like Benito from superintendent of ours in 2195 Jane, and Rose, our tenant rep there. Certainly a challenging building given that it was a predominantly seniors building in the past and now is more of a mixed building. And some of the challenges that Benito is dealing with, as well as the sincere requests from our tenant reps to say they're concerned about some of the challenges that they do have and how they're affecting their ability to feel safe and enjoy their homes. A lot of great work happening there. To Sylvia from Cooper Mills, I've got a jar of honey back just behind me now because she is absolutely persistent, and it was wonderful, and there was no way I was leaving without purchasing a jar of honey from her, and gave us a wonderful tour of Cooper Mills. Going to Dan Harrison and John, our superintendent, Era, our CMP, and then John, our tenant rep. just sharing with me some of the complexities around some of the mental health and substance abuse challenges that that particular location are struggling with, and the great work that they're doing in order to improve the tenant experience. And we heard from Ines earlier from Regent Park. There was Lloyd, Soraya, and Miguel as well, and all tenants in the Regent Park community that are passionate about ensuring that the tenant voices are heard. And when I turned to St. Clair, where we had tenants Denise, Eileen, and Shar, and they shared with us great insights about some of the challenges, some of the opportunities that they were having with their location. As I mentioned earlier, like my highlights for my weeks are when I'm getting out into the field at a hub opening or meeting our tenants and our frontline staff firsthand. I've had the opportunity to be with Sheila and the team to be at 3 hub openings now. And what the wonderful part of being there is not only do I have now some of the strategic directions in mind while I'm there, but you get to hear firsthand from the tenants and begin to be able to connect the dots to say, you know, are we having the impact that we are looking to have? The many conversations with our tenants and frontline staff, they've provided me the unvarnished truth of what they're experiencing, and certainly reinforces our commitment to ensure that we're doing everything we can for our tenants and our frontline staff. And I think you'll see that through the balance of the presentation as well. So if I go to the next slide and just talk about my 100-day plan, and from a board perspective, you'll certainly appreciate that when I put this together, it was at arm's length, and certainly didn't know the organization as well as I'm beginning to now. By and large, I'm following very well along to that 100-day plan, but certainly I know there's lots of opportunities to adjust now. I've had tours of all 3 regions. I've had almost 30 stakeholder meetings, excuse me, with city staff, with our emergency service providers, community groups, Kathy Birch from RPath, Cynthia Summers from OACH. They've all provided me with key insights and understandings on how we need to ensure that we are working collaboratively and aligned in our objective of making sure we deliver the best services to our tenants possible. I've reviewed a number of the key initiatives that are underway, certainly restructuring, the seniors housing transition, homes implementation, and our tenant engagement system refresh. And I know how important these initiatives are. We're currently in the budget process, and this has helped me understand the financial constraints and our approach to delivering value for money. Given it's my first year, I can assure you that I've participated in every department budget meeting to ensure that I have a firsthand and wholesome understanding of the challenges that they're having and how our budget is formed. I'm now spending time looking at how we build on accomplishments that the organization has made to date and how we move in that vision of good to great. This means that we're taking all of our learnings and change in the organization and using them to drive continuous improvement, always focused on our strategic priorities, exploring opportunities, and I think I speak a little more about Lean Six Sigma in another slide, but understanding our data and our systems, focusing on collaboration. And although once again, my original plan was developed at arm's length, I think I've made great progress to it, and I continue to focus on not only fulfilling the obligations that I've set out from a 100-day plan perspective, but refining it based on the expertise that the team is sharing with me. And we move to the next slide. From an early observation perspective, one of the first topics, and this one is, my apologies, I just saw a chat pop up. Is there a challenge hearing me from the presentation?
I can hear you. I'm fine. I don't know about other members.
I can hear fine.
Great.
I'll continue
okay.
then. But apologize, Deputy Mayor Bilo, but the early in my time with TCHC, very often the term of landlord plus was raised with me, and understanding how, you know, we're more than just a landlord. And when I was having discussions with the team, I almost I've discussed the idea of flipping it, and it's almost plus landlord. The plus is certainly where the complicated side of the business comes, and certainly we spend a great deal of time there and focusing. Some of the factors that contribute to the plus side of the discussions, the different inputs that I see feeding into community housing, such as rapid rehousing, some of the increase in mental health challenges that we're seeing, certainly the drug and harm reduction challenges and violence and community safety are areas that are so incredibly important. And very often they're focused on a small handful of people, but the impact that they can have and the challenges to the vast majority of wonderful people living in our communities is quite significant. And people are truly at the heart of Toronto community housing. Sometimes it's jarring to hear that unvarnished, I guess, those unvarnished experiences that we hear from tenants. And we were out at High Park just recently, and I'm thrilled to now that we have extended the invitations to board members and that we are having some attendance. But we had a desperate couple in tears asking for help with respect to a transfer. 4 individuals in a 1-bedroom, and they had been waiting for 7 years. And the sheer desperation that we saw, and connecting the good work and the strategy that we're trying to get moving forward, it just reinforces the importance. When we were out at Old Meadow for another hub opening, we had community leaders once again just asking us for access to community space and access for community space so that they could actually meet and focus on how they were going to engage the youth more effectively in a challenging community. To the Falstaff community, where a community leader there, a TCHC tenant, had sent me a communication, and what really struck me, and I'd shared this at the community meeting with Councillor Nunziata, is she described the community as wonderful, diverse, and amazingly resilient. And I thought, what a wonderful way of starting the conversation. It's certainly focused on a very important topic of community safety, but certainly acknowledging that there's a wonderful community there as well. And as our board chair had mentioned, and certainly there was some conversation around Regent Park and the recent tragedy there, it just speaks to how important people are from a community, Toronto community housing perspective, and how we continue to make them our top priority. Tenants hold us accountable and to a high standard of service, and restructuring is moving us in the right direction. We want to ensure that our community issues such as safety and stemming from gun violence that is prevalent in TCHC communities is a top priority for us. Addressing systemic issues like racism and marginalization has been an important signal to our tenants of our commitment to doing things differently. There's a group of seasoned and committed employees leading TCHC. I see it every time I'm out in the field. And together they have taken on big challenges to transform the organization and deliver excellent service to our tenants, helping them enjoy and move forward from some of the most difficult periods in the organization's history. TCHC employees live and breathe the work that they do. It's hard work that requires passion and commitment, which exists in abundance across the organization. And they want to be empowered, and I think the strategies that have been put in place are going to do exactly that. There is a fragility within the culture, though, that we need to pay attention to. They've come through a lot, and we need to be cautious about that as well. Our employees want to learn from the past, but I have the distinct impression they are keen to move forward and do great things. Finally, from a TCHC 2021 strategic priorities, I just want to say they're the right priorities at the right time. They anchor the organization in doing right by tenants while ensuring that we will focus our attention on the needs of our employees, building a healthy performance-based culture. Attention is being given to the realities of our corporate enterprise and the need to support the operations transformation that's underway, putting in modern tools and simplified systems that empower our frontline team to do the best work that they can. And finally, becoming a knowledge-based organization where quality data informs our decision-making and drives continuous improvement. From here, I just want to come back to something that I did talk about through the recruitment process. And when you look at the heart of the organization, really it is about tenants. And thank you, thanks Danielle. But it's tenants and frontline staff that are at the heart of the organization. Our corporate staff are there to empower and ensure that we are putting the systems in place for our tenants and frontline staff. From an executive leadership team, we provide the higher level guidance, and certainly the board provides the governance and ensures that we are delivering to that. But what I want to stress here is that, you know, often we will either see, say, the CEO or others at say the center of a diagram or something of that sort. It's not that way. From everything that I see happening in this organization and the way that we are focusing, it's our tenants and our frontline staff that are at the heart of the organization. And we always need to finish any consideration that we have with how is this going to impact our tenants and our frontline staff. So I'll go quickly through some of the key focus areas for opportunities. Once again, I'll come back to the strategic priorities, and I'd like to move quickly through this because we'll speak to this if we have the opportunity to do the next presentation on the agenda. But there's updates being provided there. I just want to reinforce that these are absolutely the right priorities at the right time. From a continuous improvement perspective and learning, what I had indicated earlier about the restructuring and the commitment to service excellence is this is an opportunity for us to take that as a foundation and an opportunity to continuously improve based on all of the new information that we're collecting, and not necessarily looking at it as this is the initiative and we'll be done. This is how we continue to collect the right information to drive future decisions and continuously improve. Tying some of the opportunities to our strategic priorities from a business excellence perspective, goals 1, 4, 5, and 6. What we'll see through those is the need to leverage data throughout our business processes. Data is at the center of the work that we will be doing as we go forward. It will enable our organization to make data-driven decisions and business intelligence foundations that will help us make the best decisions possible. I can't emphasize enough how important it is for important this transformation efforts are in order to not only ensure that we have the appropriate accountability in the organization, but once again, that we're making the best decisions possible. I'd like to stress that we're not alone in this crusade. Many organizations, many municipalities are taking on a similar challenge, and that we have similar struggles and objectives to those organizations. The systems and the processes at TCHC lend themselves to a Lean Six Sigma approach. Lean Six Sigma is focused on being data-driven in order to make decisions. This is my opinion and what I've learned through more than a decade of exposure to Lean Six Sigma, but many think that it is about delivering efficiencies. For me, it's more about the opportunity to engage staff and change management with almost a side benefit of the efficiencies. The efficiencies will definitely come, but the engagement and the change management is much more important. I've learned this through many years of practice and certainly have war stories to go along with it. And finally, from a fiscal responsibility is paramount, and one of the opportunities that will guide TCHC, in my opinion. A financial strategy for the organization that will underpin how we responsibly manage our resources and deliver value for money for our stakeholders is an area that I will further build on in the future. A colleague of mine from the past, Mayor Dan Carter, He and I used to talk about our time in my time in Oshawa around how we need to make finance boring. And boring in a very good way, to say it's so boring that it's predictable, and that we have all of the appropriate data and plans in place that it's just that predictable and boring. As the world moves forward, we need to be more digitally driven as well in our communication methods and engagement opportunities. And TCHC has the opportunity to lead in this area with some great work that's underway now. Landlord Plus, we started to talk about this when we look at goals 1, 2, and 4. It creates the foundation for our evolution in delivering the plus side of our work. The stable buildings, I think there's greater confidence in being able to deliver the services required in those stable buildings. It's the plus side that keeps us on our toes and has us looking at things from different angles. And once again, we want to leverage data to ensure that we're providing the appropriate supports to our tenants and making informed decisions. It's also a key driver for ensuring successful tenancies, which in turn helps us achieve the objective of providing reasonable enjoyment to all tenants. Driving the right conversations with the right partners is important. We need to understand and ensure that we have all the right supports in place. The tenant services side of things, when we look at goals 1, 3, and 4, listening to our tenants and leveraging the processes that have been implemented to measure our service standards is a powerful combination to continuously improve. I come back to that Lean Six Sigma opportunity, and certainly being out there in the field and hearing directly from them is an important part of that. A physical presence through the tenant services hubs and the regional restructuring is so much the right thing to do. We can see how our tenants are really looking forward to the opportunity to leverage the services out of those hubs, and just so excited for them to be fully operational. It creates the opportunity for us to respond quickly to our tenants' needs at a very local level. And once again, as we have talked about at the hub openings that I've had the opportunity to be at, it builds a better relationship between our frontline staff and our tenants. Learning from the thousands of daily interactions will empower our teams to take the right actions and revisit how we can improve. Communications metrics, and they form a mechanism for us to ask for service, to fulfill the services that are being requested. And we want to be predictive over time, where as we get more understandings of what the metrics are telling us about the hubs, we want to be predictive as opposed to just reactive, and therefore being able to get ahead and anticipate some of what our tenants will be looking for. And as I mentioned earlier, I've been out to all the regions and 3 hub openings now. And another important component of tenant services is having our ELT at these events. We've talked about it as a team, where Sheila and I are at virtually all of the hub openings. Certainly she's been to more than I have before I've been arrived on scene, but I've been encouraging our ELT to join us, and by and large they have been, in order to ensure that they're hearing from our frontline staff as well, and tying the decision making more broadly across the organization around what our tenants truly need. If I move to people and culture, this touches on goals 2, 3, 4, and 5. We are on a path of having a healthy performance-based culture. Recent employee engagement scores suggest that we are moving in the right direction, and it's important that we continue to build on this momentum. Goals 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the strategic plan are all shaping the culture that we aspire to have, and that is a performance-based culture. Employees have told us that they want to be empowered to support tenants and help guide the organization. We know the pandemic, anti-Black racism, and organizational history have been referenced as to create almost a culture of fear, and has had a lasting impact on our employees, and we need to pay close attention to it and certainly learn from it as part of our future decision making. The future of work is a great opportunity for TCHC to explore advances in technology and how we're working and ensuring that we're doing the best that we can for our tenants. This work is well underway with the alignment with Goal 5 and the strategic priorities in consultation with the city's Modern TO initiative. I need to underscore that this does not mean that we won't be delivering frontline services in person. Every organization needs to balance the needs of the customers and the need to continue to deliver in-person services with modernization for positions where it's possible in order to remain competitive and attract the best and brightest. Moving to community and partnerships, goals 1, 4, and 6, we're working better together. Issues of community safety are top of mind across TCHC communities and cannot be addressed solely by TCHC. Violence in our communities has shown the strength of partnerships and listening to those impacted and coming together to find solutions. TCHC has had the opportunity to respond with more agility on critical safety incidents by leveraging policies, processes in a way that drives more immediate action. And I had mentioned it earlier, but I had the opportunity to join Councillor Nunziata at the Falstaff community meeting. And what struck me was, the collaboration that I saw in the attendance that was there. Certainly there was community members, certainly there was tenants from our housing there, but we had city staff, police, CSU, comm staff, and operational staff. And it just really struck me as how quickly they came together, and certainly what it said to me is that there was strong mutual respect and interest. I was quite impressed. Ongoing partnerships with our stakeholder, the City of Toronto, continues to advance TCHC's priorities and drive accountability. The Tenants First strategy is an important opportunity for TCHC to demonstrate leadership in executing against the establishment of the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, transitioning TCHC's development function to create TO, and ensuring a smooth transfer of the scattered housing assets. There's been some indication that there may have been resistance in the past. I can say in my experience with the team that we have a committed team ready to deliver on these priorities. My team knows that the success of these priorities reflects strongly on our reputation. And as outlined in Goal 6, we are working expeditiously to deliver against these priorities. Changing the narrative, goals 2, 3, and 5. I'm not sure of how many of you are following our social media posts, but boy, there are a lot of great stories to tell about the great work that's happening in the organization. Just last week, and we had the opportunity to recognize a couple of different things. One, we landed on the cover of a magazine, and number 2, we got to celebrate a great acknowledgement of our board chair being an industry expert, and I think it's North America wide being recognized in that manner. I know there's been a lot of shift in the past year to create a more balanced narrative in the media, and we're continuing to work hard on this. We also have incredible ambassadors in our employees, our tenants, and our board members. So ensuring that we continue to communicate in a timely and relevant way is important to changing the narrative and moving us beyond some of the challenging image and reputations of the past. This, of course, is dependent on us delivering on our promises and commitments to the organization and the tenants, of course. And finally, these are just a couple of the key points that I think are going to be important for future updates to our strategic priorities. We certainly have the 2021 priorities. We've got our tenant engagement activities and the data that we will collect through there, the tenant survey response, our employee engagement data, the shareholder priorities, and continuous and learning improvement when we're collecting that data. And that ultimately is going to translate into an opportunity for us to develop a strategic plan out to 2025 and hopefully beyond that. So these are a number of the critical inputs I think that will help inform that discussion for the future. And from there, I just want to come back to my leadership principles, and I'm always focused on ensuring our tenants and staff are at the center and the focus of our organization. Keeping the momentum is important to me, and celebrating success and focusing on collaboration to ensure that we are working very effectively with our key partners as we move forward. There is incredible momentum in the organization. I know there's opportunities to improve, but by and large, I see great work happening in the organization. And I will finish there and say thank you, Chair Smith.
Thank you very much, Jag. Great presentation, and you're well on your way of accomplishing all your 100-day objective. I want to ask, is there any comments that anyone would like to make or ask Dag for the on his presentation? So is there any? Paula?
I do also just want to recognize that that was a very fulsome presentation, and you've been very, very busy in your first number of days. We can see that. I just had one thing that I would, you flashed on or touched on the building, which had been a seniors building and now has collapsed into a different type of building. And I don't know if Councillor Nunziata, she's not in her chair, but she often talks about 1901 Weston Road, which had been a seniors building, and now it's changed. There's one at Roslawn that used to be. I'm just wondering if you might follow up with that and find out how many of those previous seniors buildings are now no longer seniors. And I think the seniors you spoke to really do reflect the anguish of many of the seniors in these buildings now, that they're quite nervous. So I'm glad you caught that. I know we can tell you're listening when you're out there, Jack. Thank you very much.
So thank you. And if I could take a bit of liberty, Chair Smith, and say you have not sold the organization short. It is a large and complex organization, and I know that the board had certainly shared that with me.
Yes, Paula, were they originally Metro buildings?
I believe they were. So and people got moved in as, anyway, I just think it's something worth knowing how many there. I don't know if there's 5. I don't know if there's 50. I just have no idea, but it came up again at a lunch the other day in the frustration of the seniors there.
So just for my clarification, would they be part of the seniors portfolio for transferring?
No,
or have they been moved out of that?
No, they're in the family unit. There's over usually maybe 40 to 50% non-seniors. So they're no longer deemed seniors buildings, but they had been in the past. So that's the issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, we're pretty close to losing quorum here.
Yeah.
Okay. Adele, I think had one question.
Francis has left.
Can you confirm quorum, please, Dara?
I count 6 of 12, which is bare quorum.
Okay. Did you have a quick comment, Adele?
I just wanted to say thank you very much for the report, and we're really glad you're here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sincerely appreciate it.
So would you move a motion to receive the report then, Adele?
Yes.
Thank you. Second, John. All those in favor? Is carried. Jag, with regards to the next item is the strategic priorities. I'm not sure whether, I know we're running close to time on that. Is there any, well, your report is very full that was circulated. You want to comment on that? I guess trying to
through the chair, if I might, the early slides certainly are more background. I think it may be helpful if there was a portion of the presentation that you wanted to, starting at slide 6 and with Sheila, certainly the team could go through a quick update so that the board knows where we are with respect to it and if they have any questions. But we could shorten the overall, I guess, the presentation itself by going right into the details and allowing the board to get into that.
Sure, that would be great. So Sheila going to do this part?
Sheila, would you mind starting? We'll skip the preamble portions and dive right into the good stuff.
Which I think you've covered really well. And what I'll do is just take a couple of minutes on each goal along with Barbara and Paula and highlight a couple of areas that we've moved ahead in significantly. Goal 1, support the rights of every tenant to have reasonable enjoyment in their homes. What progress have we made against that goal?
Sorry.
So you can go to the next slide.
Sheila, just for the board, we do have 2 deputants on this. Do you want to hear the presentation before we move to the deputants, or do you want to hear the deputants first?
Well, we've started the presentation, right?
Okay.
Why
Sorry to
don't
interrupt.
we continue on and
Sure.
we'll have deputations afterwards.
Okay.
Sorry, Dara, I didn't realize we had deputation.
I missed it as well. Sorry, Sheila.
Goal 1, every tenant to have reasonable enjoyment in their homes. So to do that, we need to understand who our tenants are at a fairly granular level, at a building level, at a community level, so that we can better support their needs. We are gathering data across the company about our capture information to support tenants related to tenancy management, safety, community programming, and we're rolling that up in a form, hub by hub, that each integrated hub team, that frontline team that works daily directly with tenants, will be able to use that material to support decision making. To ensure reasonable enjoyment in their homes, we need to make strong connections, partnerships with key social services. We've made over 8,000 tenant referrals to support agencies so far in 2021, more to come. And we have also been working very closely with our service provider in the city on a rapid rehousing program. And what that does is allow for tenants who come out of the shelter system to come into housing with the basics, with furniture, with support, and it provides staff to ensure that as these tenancies evolve, that that support continues and that they're monitored. And through that program, we've been able to house 765 individuals this year. Again, to ensure that tenants have reasonable enjoyment in their homes, we know that confronting anti-Black racism is a key topic of interest to Black tenants. The board approved the strategy. We are now implementing that strategy. We've had 600 tenants and staff participate, and tenants through our center have had an opportunity to review the divisional CABR work plans as they move. So the board has approved the strategy, we're implementing the strategy, and through the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Center, ensuring that tenants have an opportunity to weigh in on those plans. The second goal, in order to support the needs of our tenants, we know now a little bit more about them, who they are. We want to build high-performing teams that bring to life a culture of tenant service. So a couple of key initiatives that we're working hard on in that area, the Confronting Anti-Black Racism strategy, not only for tenants, but also for staff. We need to have a diverse and inclusive work environment where employees feel safe, valued, and empowered. And to date, those divisional access action plans have been vetted with divisions, with the CABR staff, and have been shared with the board July 22nd. So we're actively working on implementing the strategy for tenants and staff. And with that, I will hand it over to Barbara to speak to the next 2 initiatives.
Thank you, Sheila. So we know that there's a lot of different initiatives underway to focus on what it is that we're doing to ensure that we have our staff fully versed, trained to understand what it means to bring to life the culture of tenant service. And as you know, this year we carried out an employee engagement survey earlier in the year. And Jack has referenced the very strong response rate and generally positive outcome. We undertake the survey, of course, so that we can get information and get an understanding from our staff. What's working well, where are the gaps, what are the needs that they have. And so the information and the data gathered through the engagement survey enables us to take the next step, which is developing action plans. And we do this, and we're well on our way to developing both divisional action plans and corporate action plans that address the opportunities that have been identified in the survey that will allow us to continue on our path to building high-performing teams. So that's the employee engagement priority. And we also have a very strong comprehensive training program, the Better Together training program. And this has continued to support frontline staff, ensuring that staff have the skills, knowledge, tools, understanding of the competencies that have been identified in order to provide excellence in frontline service. And while we did have some delays in training implementation, as this is done in person as a result of our need to adhere to the COVID protocols, we are well on our way to being back on track to implementing the training that had been put on hold.
Okay, and I'll now move to goal 3. So goal 1, know your tenants, reasonable enjoyment. Goal 2, build high-performing local teams. Goal 3 is about equipping frontline staff to be able to meet those local needs. And if I can go to the next slide, I'll just highlight 2 initiatives. The hub playbook. So when we moved to 3 regions, 88 service hubs across the portfolio, we brought those frontline teams together and we did hub simulations where we had frontline teams come together and problem solve regular occurring issues of tenant service needs. We documented those procedures. It's in a living document called the Hub Playbook. Barbara spoke to the Better Together training, which has, again, brought those local teams together, provided training for them. We've moved through the training, and as the next step in the evolution of the Hub team working locally with tenants, our frontline Hub teams have identified specific projects that they want to continue working on to better improve service to tenants. At the end of Q2, we had 11 hubs open. As of last week, 100 High Park, we have 19 hubs open to date. Our plan is to open 52 hubs in their permanent locations by year end and 35 interim hubs, so that by the end of 2021, we will have a hub physical location up across the portfolio. And as Jake said, going to the hub openings and having an opportunity to speak directly to tenants, to introduce them to the frontline team, to have them understand the full range of services that we provide, cleaning, maintenance, tenancy management, community safety and support, make those connections locally between frontline staff and tenants. It has really been the highlight of my time here in Toronto Community Housing, and I'm looking forward to more of it. Moving to goal 4. So we know who our tenants are, building high-performing teams. We equip them. Now we need data to drive decisions and to, as Jake spoke to, continue to make process improvements. If we can go to the next slide, a couple of accomplishments there. So as we hear from tenants through the solutions team, through our complaint intake system, we are processing improvements continually to improve service. I'll give you a quick example. The company previously, for a vendor to be dispatched for no heat, 3 tenants had to call the call center and raise the issue of no heat. We did a pilot. We looked at what is that really saving us. We found not much. So now when a tenant calls with an issue, we dispatch. So that was complaints that tenants have that has turned into a process improvement that is improving the quality of that tenant experience on the ground. I've talked to you for a long time about the service quality indicators. We went out initially, did a round of tenant consultation at the start of restructuring early in 2020, heard from tenants, what does quality service look like to you? We're now able, with tenant leadership being established in our hubs coming online, we're able to go to those tenant leaders on a hub-by-hub basis, have them rank their service experience. We compare that to how staff rank their view of service delivery, and where there are discrepancies, we're able to do walk-arounds with tenants on site to fix specific issues. And I'll just give you a couple of quick examples. At 10 Humberline, tenants rated our cleaning as not satisfactory. And what we learned through that walk around with tenants was that they have an issue with illegal garbage dumping, inappropriate garbage disposal. So by being out there locally in the field with tenants, with staff doing a walk around, we were able to do a deep dive into why weren't they satisfied with their cleaning experience, and found that it related to illegal dumping, and we're able to action that and fix that work. And with that, I will hand it over to Paula to speak to the last initiative under this goal.
Thank you so much, Sheila. So having been quite new to the organization, I was very excited to see the abundance of data that we actually have. But of course, to make sound decisions with data, you need a governance framework that will really help you understand what, how, why, and when. We use the data, so that work is underway. We have a manager of data governance who uses slides with us. We're working across the organization to really understand the nature of the data that we have, what we need, and most importantly, creating a framework around how we will use that data going forward. So really, for an organization like TCHC that has an abundance of data in this way, having this framework is really critical, and I'm really pleased to say that that work is well underway under this goal. And with that, I'll hand it back to Sheila, who will speak to Goal 5.
So Goal 5, now we have our data, we have information coming in from tenants. We need to transform the way we work through the implementation of effective and efficient tenant service processes, systems, and tools. So a big body of work that we are winding up the first draft on now. If I can move to the next slide. We are developing service standards in every pillar. So a service standard for cleaning, for maintenance, tenancy management, community safety and support. So we look at the pillar, we look at what tenant expectations are, we look at the tasks required to meet those expectations to ensure that we have the right number of staff deployed in the right way, in the right area to fulfill our standards. We're also moving through the implementation of the homes project. We are in process. Louisa can't be with us today, but we are in process in completing a rollout of phase 2A. We're moving to the last and final phase of the homes project early in 2021. We are also working with the last initiative, working closely with the city on their modern TO initiative. The central workforce that currently works out of 931 will be transitioned down to Metro Hall over time, and as we make that transition to a new way of working that the city has adopted through modern TO, we will be firming up a flexible work policy, learning from COVID and also responding to the new infrastructure that modern TO will be providing to us. And with that, I'll hand it back to Paula to wrap up on Goal 6.
Thank you, Sheila. So Goal 6 is really around working with the City of Toronto to expeditiously deliver on the tenants first directives and commitments. We're well underway with many of these objectives that we've set, primarily the transition of the standalone homes. On June 25th, the City of Toronto announced the results of the successful proponents, the Neighbourhood Land Trust and Community Land Trust, who will assume landlord duties of those 643 properties, mostly single-family homes. The property transfers we expect to happen beginning early in the new year, Q1 2022, and should be completed by the end of the year next year. Things are looking really good on the integrated services model. I won't speak much about that, as I know we've had lots of time on that particular part of our work under this role. But Grant is on the line if you have any questions. You see two yellow here, and essentially they are just aligned from a timing perspective with the Seniors Housing Corporation. A key objective really is for us to have the shared services agreement in place. That work is just starting, and we anticipate it will be completed in the first Q2 of 2022, which is why you see us in the yellow phase at this time. But we are confident in terms of moving forward with a vendor to help do that work. And then with the City of Toronto, in terms of implementing the transfer development, there has been a request to bring in an external consultant to undertake comprehensive review. And again, we expect a delay in that transfer result of work. That'll be sometime in 2022.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? I've had some problems. Keep getting flipped in and out. For some reason, you can't see me, although my information says I'm on the screen, but I'm obviously not on the screen. Can you hear me, Dharma?
We see you, yes.
Yeah, we see you and hear you.
Okay, well, I don't see myself here. Anyway, thanks very much. I guess I just want to apologize because a lot of work went into both JAG's presentation and this presentation as well. And because we're so pressed for time, I guess I feel we, from a board perspective, need to apologize because there's so much information, rich information in this that I just feel we wish we could spend more time having discussion on it. And perhaps one suggestion might be at the next committee meetings, the appropriate pieces could be discussed more fully with respect to those three areas that the committees work on. We still have two deputants.
Sorry, Brian, can I just make one quick observation that these are really seminal pieces for the board. They're large strategic pieces, and they shouldn't be number whatever this is on the agenda.
Yeah.
There should be a presentation at the beginning of the meeting of critical pieces that we can't always be running out of time. And I would just ask JAG to think about that, the way this is kind of set up, how we would be able to deal with those things.
Hear, hear.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Paula and maybe Tim, when we catch up with him, we'll stress that with him in setting future agendas, because there's so much rich information. We would like to.
Chair, I'd like to suggest that we hear from the deputants. We're an hour over time, and then adjourn the meeting after hearing from the deputants and refer the seniors housing transition to the next meeting.
Is there anything in the seniors housing, Dara, that's
Could I ask a
required
question?
at this point?
Could I ask a question? It
Sure.
relates to the strategic priorities. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Adele.
I think your idea about bringing it to the individual committees is a good one. And in the report, there was a much more detailed report that went through very specific percentages and everything. And I think given we've had so many discussions about processes and in the home section, Sheila, I don't know who's responsible for it, but in the home section, it does talk about a number of key business processes that you've had reviewed, and it seemed like it was going very well, and there was a green light beside it and a very high percentage attached to it. I would like it by fact that that comes back and that you give us more details on what business processes you're reviewing and what changes are being made, and how you're measuring the progress, because we've had a number of serious discussions about business processes. So I would be very interested in hearing about that. So I'm going to ask that comes to BIFAC, the next BIFAC meeting, and is put on the agenda.
So I would suggest that to each of the chairs of the three committees review these goals and reports and introduce items in your agenda relating to those, like Adele has suggested. So Dara, just clarifying with regards to John's question, is there anything with regards to seniors housing that needs to be dealt with today, or can it be postponed to the Uba's got her hand up, but go ahead, Uba, and then we'll wait for Dara to report after you've spoken.
I'll just take a second to say thank you to Sheila and Jack for opening these hubs, because one of the requests that came up when Sheila and I met with different leaders last couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, was to see the hubs and get to know the GMs and the frontline workers. So for opening these hubs, people will have more, their questions and requests is just answered. So thank you so much. I just want to say that.
Thank you.
Dara, do you have any feedback with regard to the seniors item?
So I don't see Mr. Campbell. At this stage, I can see 5 board members. If we have Mr. Campbell, we have 6. I'm actually in an exchange with governance staff to make sure that we're clear that our quorum is 6 or 7. So we may not be able to approve item 7, or there was a new business item that was going to be added to appoint Ms. Imrie as the board's liaison in relation to Create TO. But to the extent that those items need board approval, they're more problematic if we conclude that we don't have quorum. So I do think we have to adjourn those 2 items. I'm sensitive to the board's concerns with respect to the placement of these items on the agenda. I would note that these are the 3rd and 4th item on the regular agenda. And so given that one of the first item was the approval of the collective agreement, we made the decision that that was a matter that we really needed to make sure got dealt with at this meeting. And then we moved into the 2 matters that we've been dealing with now. The alternative, I suppose, would be to move the consent agenda matters to the end of the meeting. And then if board members want to pull matters from the consent agenda, at least we're sure that the regular items get dealt with first. But I do think we'll need to adjourn these matters to the next meeting.
Sure.
Okay. Which ones, Dara, please? What are you saying?
So that's the seniors housing transition.
Yes.
And there was a new business item that we had discussed with the chair to appoint Ms. Imrie as the board's Create TO liaison.
I think the
Um,
chair has just selected her, not necessarily a board appointment. She could operate in that way. Could be the chair, could be her as chair of BIFAC. She's been invited. He's been invited to select somebody. So we're not in gray area, too gray.
Well, I think we all have confidence that Adele will do a good job if she's willing to, and we can approve that at the next meeting, which I think is December 9th.
As far as the
approval.
As far as the seniors housing transition is concerned, I will defer to Jag and Sheila as to whether or not that report can await the next board meeting, or whether we'll need to schedule a special board meeting to address that.
Oh.
I just wanted to point out I was invited to a meeting. It's on October the 25th, as it relates to Create TO. So is it still okay that I attend the meeting?
Definitely, from my perspective.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just just further to Uba's point, I just want, if you have an opportunity to go to a hub opening, I highly recommend it. And I went with Marcel to the one at 100 High Park, and it's great. Sheila introduces everyone from the different, the cleaners and security, maintenance people. Anyway, it was great. And repair and maintenance got a shout out and an applause from the tenants, and so it was great. And
so
just on the seniors, please, Brian.
Yes,
I think
Paul.
that was set that both boards are supposed to be approving something. I don't know. I think you're right to ask Jag, is that required? Are we behind schedule? And that's another item that should have been upfront, because that's a tenant's first requirement. And I did see anyway, so it's just got to do with the particular things that are urgent to make sure we do on an agenda.
So we can certainly hopefully address that in future agendas. And if we need a special meeting to approve anything with regards to seniors, Dara, you can
We'll schedule a special meeting, or we may circulate a unanimous director resolution for approval.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to have to cut out in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think everybody, I do want to come back to the fact that we did have two deputants with regards to item number 6. Don't know whether they're still with us or not, Dara. Whether we want to give apologies to them for that, because we don't really have quorum now.
I think we have them waiting on the phone, Dara.
So they're still with us if we want to. We have the two deputants waiting.
John has to leave. I'm sure that, it's now 1 o'clock. Basically, I'm not, I think we could invite them back to speak to this issue or this item at the next board meeting if they still wish to.
Given that we appear to have losing quorum, I think that's what we'll have to do.
And they could submit a written one if they wish.
These items are deferred to the next agenda, so any deputant would come.
Sorry, the deputants are on the matter of the strategic priorities, which is item 6.
Oh, I see. Then we'd ask them to come back. That's right. Okay.
Okay.
That's fine. We can do that. The revitalization of long-term economic and employment benefits, I'd ask that come back. John is gone. John, are you there?
I'm still here. Yeah. I just got to go.
If that could just go to the committee, because I didn't see it back on the agenda. So maybe we can talk about making sure that discussion can take place. Thank you.
Okay. At this point, I guess I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Adele, thank you. Seconded by Marcel. I'm sure everyone's in favor. And we'll really look at the structuring of the meetings for the next session and speak to Tim to coordinate that with Jag and Dharma.